Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right here on Liberty Works Radio Network, where liberty works for you. And this is your host, Tom Novelist, and I am absolutely excited today to have on the phone with me John Trudel, an author extraordinaire. John, how are you today?
I am simply wonderful, Tom. Honored to be on your show and looking forward to our discussions.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I mean, we could throw the accolades back and forth for quite a while, that's for sure, because as I made that introduction and considering that our mutual friend Ben Peake made the introduction, right there alone, I knew you were a class act and just one of the top-notch people around the world. So it just works very well for me to have the opportunity. I've read some of your books as well as to have you on the program. So, with that, I have to ask you, John, if I may, is that, you've done a lot of interviews over these years, and I am just wondering what in the world has brought you to want to be on my program?
Well, that's interesting. Okay, and I've spent the last week or so talking to my wife about that. I do novels. They win awards. People like them. Occasionally, the people hate them, and they get very angry at me, and then we have trolls and everything. But basically, what I have tried to do, I'll give two contact points for our listeners. One is my author site for my novels, just my name, www.johntrudel, JOHNTRUDEL.com. And more specifically, my blog, which is the same kind of thing, blog, B-L-O-G, .johntrudel.com. And what I've tried to write in all of my novels, and we can talk about my background later and how I got where I am, but I tried to write the hero's journey in an American context where people are trying to do the right things. It's good versus evil, and the bad guys are very powerful. But the good guys take a battering, but hopefully we prevail. It's like John Wayne, or just go back to America 10, 20 years ago, see old America. Mm-hmm. Now, what makes me particularly proud to be on your show, and why would I do this? Because I take abuse from the left a lot. Fortunately or unfortunately, I have ancestry. I grew up on the East Coast, and my roots go all the way back to colonial America, and I had a couple of people who were there, and that's kind of in my blood. Mm-hmm. And so a few people, against the odds, managed to build freedom for the world, and I think that's great. Mm-hmm. So all this stuff that I do with my novels, and I talk about books, and I make up stories, and I meet the most interesting people, every once in a while, along the way in the discussions, something comes up that is very important to America. And I have lots of sources out there, many, many people now that I'm published and have somewhat of a reputation, feed me things. And they typically don't want to be identified. And for years I was a consultant, and what I always did, whatever, tell me something, and I always protect my sources. And so I hear about things, and a lot of that is background from my novels. But every once in a while, an important issue comes up for America, and it overlaps the sort of thing I'm talking about. And I'll just take the most recent one. And I think that it's something, our founding fathers would be proud of this. Here, a few Americans, working by themselves have maybe made a change. The most recent time this happened, over the course of my novels, now about 10 years, this has happened maybe 3 or 4 times. One was recent, and it started, 3 or 4 months ago. And, of course, what the left would like to do in any way they can is they want to remove President Trump. Mm-hmm. They've been banging away on that for a long time, and it's getting kind of tedious. Well, they want to impeach him, or they want to disqualify him for being mentally incompetent, or on and on and on, or conspiring with the Russians. Well, along anything it takes, and if all that fails, I guess we go to an attempted assassination, but I hope not. 2-3 months ago, you started hearing all these strange things on social media and on the so-called fake news about, Article 25, Amendment 25, removing somebody who's incompetent. Yes. And so Trump's in bad health. He's going to tip over any day now, right? So we kept hearing that. And then it faded away, and then it came back. They cycle through various things. It's been back a couple times. Well, just late last month, it was back again, and the candidate... Oh, and let's cut to the VA. One of the things that irritates me greatly is that our illegals are being treated better than our veterans, and that's maddening. America isn't supposed to be that way.
As a veteran, that really irks me, so I understand.
Yeah, it really frosts me. It makes me very angry. So Trump's candidate for the VA to fix this was his doctor. Very non-controversial doctor, a Navy captain for many years. He was been a doctor to presidents. He did Obama, So back then, the doctor's just wrong. Trump's in bad health. So they tried that, and they tried different things. And then when he came up for as a candidate to head the VA, it got really vitriolic. And they're saying, this doctor, he prescribes drugs, he's a drug addict, he's a drunk, he's this, that, and the other thing. Yeah. And they just trashed him, and it was a furor in the media. And so he did not get confirmed. Right. Okay, so that was Ronnie Johnson. Yeah. Well, it goes on and on and on. What in the world is going on here? And even as an observer with sources, I'm thinking, this is very persistent. Where are they getting this from? Well, Sarah Carter, who's done a great job on Fox, she finally found out. She says, from 3 sources, I know who's doing this. It's another doctor, Jennifer Pena. And she is vice president. She's the vice president's doctor. Mm-hmm. Okay, we start talking about this, and I have a lot of military people in my thread. I said, "What is going on here?" And she's leading the assault and leaking all this information to trash Dr. Ronnie Johnson, and start talking to people, and these military guys, recent military or military support, say this is really bad news, and they're telling me all these stories of how the military under Obama, for unverified charges, people with 30-year careers were just trashed. He made this assault or this insinuation, and so they say it's really a problem in the military, and this is serious stuff. And so I'm saying, all right, well, we have to do something. We can't let this thing prevail. Mm-hmm. And so I'm talking to them, and the people who knew the most said, well, John, really, we can't do anything. These are not appointed positions. They were given by the military. Okay, there's no voting or anything else. And that's just how it is. And if he gets replaced, then this Jennifer Pena will probably move over to be Trump's doctor, and she will either say he's insane or he tried to rape her or something, and they get their coups. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about this. Was there anything can be done? And basically everybody I talked to was very pessimistic. Mm-hmm. It would take a sea change, and Mad Dog is busy fighting wars. He doesn't get involved in that. We have to do something. So we talked it around, and we tweeted it all over the place, and sure enough, on May the 4th of this month, all of a sudden, this Dr. Pena disappears. Mm-hmm. Poof. No, this disappears from the news, disappears from her job. She is gone. Nobody knows what happened. And I'm thinking to myself, did I have anything to do with helping this? And maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Maybe it's like the rooster that crows every day and the sun comes up, But I 2 or 3 or 4 times something like this big has happened, and I think if I wasn't there with my footprint for my novels, I couldn't have this impact, and I hope I did help it, but I think something good came out of it.
Right.
And so the patriotic thread,
Yeah, with some of the things that I do know because of my contacts still, and we're down to about 5 minutes in this first segment, and I know for a fact from direct contacts that Obama was purging really good operators, and I still have touches into those unique communities. And, those guys were telling me, and JAG officers were telling me, there were purges, from the E7 up of folks. So when we start looking at what the potentials are in the existing military and some of the things that you touch about in your writings, it just becomes that continued intrigue and that interesting cabal that our founders warned about and was kind of always seated in there somewhere. And those are the types of things, as you said, from a patriotic perspective, we as citizens definitely have to have our eyes open to. And that's why we were called into a participatory type of government, which we really don't have anymore. So kind of in this last couple minutes, about 2 minutes, can you give me just a real quick background on you? I mean, I know you're a high-tech guy and, math, sciences, and all of that, but could you give me about a minute and a half, a little bit more intro, and then we'll pick up in the next segment.
Okay, here's the short form version. I'm a kid living in rural New Jersey. Like I said, old East Coast roots. We had, at one time, the family had been very, very wealthy. Both sides of the family lost all their money, so we're poor folks living out in kind of hardscrabble New Jersey, little town. And but it turned out I lived in America, okay? Mm-hmm. And so I started off and I picked blueberries for 8 cents a pound, and I was interested in airplanes and radios and all that kind of stuff, and I wound up going to good colleges on scholarships. And okay, I became an engineer, and by God, they really needed engineers, so I'm off there learning things and everything else. And I didn't know where all I was going, but it turned out a thing called Vietnam came along, and I never finished my doctorate, and I wound up in kind of the twilight zone. I was the idiot savant in the back of very classified airplanes and things, building weapon systems. I never served in the military, but I had a lot of friends that were there. And I worked on things like what would be topical. We talk about the Pueblo today, and there it is. It's a warship captured sitting over there in North Korea. Very classified spy ship. One of my systems was on that ship. I worked on the early AC-130 gunships and everything, and had a lot of friends who did that in the military. My best friend didn't survive Vietnam. But I felt so good because those guys were so thankful I was doing things to help them. Okay, it was pretty crude back in those days. If I told the stories, nobody would believe them, but there we were. And now so I worked in high tech for many, many years, big companies, Sanders Associates, LTV Systems, both of which got bought by firms like Lockheed and everything that are more familiar, but highly classified stuff. Went on my own, started some companies, worked for a big company, Tektronix. Finally, I became a consultant, and I just wandered the world with clients like Intel and IBM and all this kind of stuff. And along the way, if you're a little tiny consultant working for a big company, how do you get IBM to hire you? Well, you can call them up and
John.
Well, okay, send me money, I'll help you. No, that doesn't work. You have to do seminars, write books. So I wrote books, nonfiction, and I thought I knew how to write. And I retired from that. They said, you ought to do novels. And I go, how hard can that be? Took me 10 years, but that's how I got to where I am now.
No, that's excellent. And somewhere in that journey, I know that's where you met Ben, and in my journey, that's where I met him. And interestingly, I used to know the XO of the Pueblo, so I have a kind of distant connection that way. So very, very interesting opportunities. And as we come
I met Ben years ago, and it was in that era, and we worked at the same place, and it was all classified stuff, and there we were.
Yeah, how about that? So when we come back into the next segment, we're going to dig in a little bit more about some of the uniqueness of your books and how the series developed. And when you say you have your sources, it's extremely interesting because remember that our founders had their sources as well. So when Sam Adams returns, we always remember that those anti-federalists, they got it right here on Liberty Works Radio Network. Welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right here on Liberty Works Radio Network. And this is Tom Novelist, your host, and we have John Trudel on with us. And you know what? That was a real interesting first segment to get that background. And I love it when we could kind of do those checkbacks, John, and see that somewhere along our paths, we may have an influence with other folks. And one of the things that I appreciate about you being on this program is that a lot of times I feel like I speak to the choir here because this is a very patriotic network, and you're not going to get attacked by any of those that'll take and contact me later. As a matter of fact, I'm really hoping that this gives a good boost within the markets that we reach for yourself to have those other opportunities for folks to jump in there and look at your material and see just some of the great writing that you have done. So thank you for being back on.
Well, thank you. And yes, we agree on many of those things, and these are very interesting times. And actually, it's a novelist. Everybody, isn't it fun being a novelist? So it is. It's wonderful. People talk to you, you write these stories, and they keep turning real. But you also have to remember that it's usually the novelists that are among the first to go to the gulags.
Well, I kind of look at, yourself and some of the others that are out there in your genre, and that is that you're somewhat prophetic in that you're able to take those source informations and weave them with some of those future thought, or taking what's happening today and really processing them to some conclusions, and usually pretty interesting conclusions. Is that kind of what you do with your in putting your books together?
Absolutely. My tagline, which you'll see on my author site and other places, is thrillers are fiction, ... until it happens. Okay? As I will make up these stories, and I'll talk of a couple of episodes, but all of them have come true in one way or another, some pretty quickly, some slowly, but all of them are kind of writ large. There's technology in it, there's evil people, there's good people. And just for an example, my breakthrough book a number of years ago was probably Privacy Wars. And I took the kind of themes that they had in 1984, but I moved it into cyberspace. Yes. And what I did is, what if everybody was being watched? Okay, which seemed kind of far-fetched back then. Even with the stuff that we know, there's a lot of surveillance of everybody being watched. And what if there was a conspiracy, and so forth and so on? Well, it turns out, fortuitously, I guess, almost the only thing the left and the right agree about is nobody wants to be surveilled all the time, 24/7, and so there you are. You can be arrested at any time, and so forth and so on. And so that book won 3 national awards and got me on the radar screens. Yeah. Privacy Wars, and we went on from there. The other books have had similar experiences, but that was probably the thing that...
for a second there. So a lot of folks don't know, and I don't know if we'll get to it in much detail, maybe in the third segment a little bit, but was that the one that really sparked you with Amazon and put you hard on their radar, was Privacy Wars?
No, that came much later.
All right, good.
How
We'll
it
leave that
how it
then.
sparked the attention had nothing to do with that. In fact, back then, Amazon was my publisher, my only publisher. Okay, so there they were, and my book comes out. And this fellow Snowden, we hadn't even started marketing the book yet. It was before Christmas, and okay, the book's done. You have to rest for a couple of weeks. And Snowden is running for his life, stuck in the Moscow airport, and everybody's saying, "What's going on here?" And everybody wanted to do interviews. All right. Well, the people who were doing that kind of work obviously couldn't talk about it, non-disclosures and security concerns. The ones not doing it didn't know anything. Well, I'm a novelist. So all of a sudden everybody wants to do interviews of my book. And that's how it happened. And at the time, it didn't particularly bother Amazon, I don't think. I really never know exactly what goes. It's a big machine and things happen. And right now, yes, I am somewhat famously blacklisted on Amazon. I am not allowed to post there even under my own author sites, but they are still selling my books.
Oh, that's good.
So that's where we are now.
That's all that matters, right?
It helps. It helps.
I always tell people, it's the interesting is that anybody can be an author. As you well know, I'm self-published, and yet it comes then to being able to market and sell and get the value out there of what you're trying to communicate. And so we looked at privacy wars, and then kind of tell me a little bit about soft target. I mean, that is interesting.
Okay, well, soft target is different, and let's see, how can I talk? Soft target is really about bioweapons. And what happened there, that touched reality, too. There was a fellow named Larry Bailey, Captain Larry Bailey, who had retired by then. But he, many people say he started the SEALs, and I needed somebody that was good at special ops. So he helped me with background for the books, and that dragged me into other things. And so what we have is bioweapons, and wouldn't that be scary? And so I did an awful lot of research on that, and it was basically, what if the terrorists, the Islamic terrorists, had a bioweapon that could target people in the West? And that's actually possible, and away we went. And it, too, turned real, but in a different way. Because I think, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to unleash bioweapons? No, what Obama had, all of a sudden, and it's still there today. I mean, even Trump hasn't erased the visuals, the remnants of it. But we've always had quarantines. Ever since there's been an American, if he came over from some strange place, he would be quarantined. Right. Okay. Well, today, if it's a racehorse, you can't bring it out in public for 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is. But our borders are porous, in they come, and all these old diseases that were eradicated are coming back. Yes. And in fact, some of them that have never been here, like we imported Ebola. Who would do that in their right mind? Right. But that's that background. So it came true, but in a weirder way. It wasn't bioweapons being dispensed. It was bioweapons walking across the borders.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that makes it interesting because we look at all of what happens with the open borders. I know that I spent a couple of years as an associate member on the Energy Security Council, and during those various briefings that we would get from all the different agencies, I remember in particular one case, we were getting a debrief from an agency where one of the top terrorists in the world came across the border. They caught this person, but because of the catch and release that's been there for many, many years, as you well know, they had to let the person go. They kicked them out of the country. Then it cost us another $5.5 million to work with Interpol to go out there and chase this guy down in another country. So we look at not just from the really, really bad guys, but the insidiousness of what you just mentioned by people coming in that are diseased and affecting us today, and that's not much spoken about. So as we kind of move through, what got you going next, John? What was some of the things that really piqued your interest? And again, how it meets some of that which is happening, predictively, if you will.
Well, absolutely, and we're talking my new series of books, which is quite popular now, and the Ravens series, Ravens Run, and Ravens Redemption, and now Ravens Resurrection, which is just out. In fact, my first signing in the Northwest I'll be doing June 1st, so it's a very recent book.
And I'm holding
so what I
up
did
for the
there
folks on YouTube so that they can see the copy that I've read, and wow, it's really good.
Well, thank you. So what I did there, you do multiple things, but what would be really scary? What kind of a hypothesis? And what if you had terrorists with Iranian nuclear weapons? That'd be pretty scary, right? So I go, not very likely. I mean, it doesn't seem plausible, but that's a good storyline. So let's play with that. So I did. And away we went. So and a lot of the old stuff with EMP weapons and everything is unclassified now, so you can see all those things.
Yes.
And other things I did is, which sounds really weird. I'm probably the only thriller writer who has won major awards in paranormal. That's usually werewolves and things like that. Right. Well, I put a remote viewer in there, a person who could see things. And actually, back in the day, we had such people, and they did things, and sometimes it worked. Right. Okay. Right. And so I took this kind of woo-woo lady, and I paired her with a burned-out counterterrorism guy who was fired by the CIA for being hostile to bad guys and killing them, basically. And he winds up, they're going to fire him with prejudice and everything else. We get saved, and they assign him to this seer. And she's a national resource because she's really good at this stuff. And so they're off by themselves, and his job is to keep her alive. So that's Raven, and my female protagonist is Josie. Now, they are total opposites. Any kind of violence, just seeing a gun or something freaks Josie out. And if it's more violent than that, it can actually destroy her and make her catatonic. Well, Raven is nothing but violence, but he has to stay around to keep her alive. Okay,
right.
So that's my pairing.
Right. We're down to about 3 minutes, so I just want to give you a little mark because I want to pick up definitely on this series as we get into the last segment, but please go on for the next minute and a half.
Okay, well, so Raven's Run is the first book, and I think you read that. I put some other things in there, but it's the same thing. The books you try to get them out for the Christmas market, and there I am, and it's coming out, and my plot line is terrorists with Iranian nukes, and then they have a Christmas party. Michelle Bachmann is retiring from Congress, and so at the Christmas party, she sees Obama for the last time she's ever going to see him, and she sets up a deal with her family, and she says, well, stall the reception line. I want to talk to him. And she does, and she says, Mr. President, whatever you do, you must not let Iran have nuclear weapons. Right. And, of course, he goes, there, don't worry your pretty little head about it, and so forth. And, of course, she was on the House Intelligence Committee, so she's briefed in on everything, and she's going, yeah, right. So there it was, and all of a sudden that gets a lot of news, and so I put out a little newsletter, and I said, well, this is real bad, and we need to stop it. Oh, okay, so history rolls along, and for the second time in history, we have a major head of state coming to warn Congress in America of a major threat. Last time it was Churchill and Hitler. This time it was Netanyahu and the Obama administration. They boycotted him. And Congress, for a while, wasn't even allowed to see this deal. I'm not sure anybody's seen it yet. But that got very popular, and my little note, what to do about it, was picked up by one of the presidential campaigns way back then, and it went to lots, so it got forwarded to a lot of people, and that got me on the radar screen for that.
Yeah.
And so that's Raven's Run, and now there's a whole series of Raven's books.
Yes, yes. Well, it's very, very interesting because those of us who have been around for a while and have had the opportunities to follow some of these intrigues, on that global basis, it is predictable as to what's going on. But then when we see what happened with our own administration, we always look at what are the others in there that, the legal term now is colluding with others, or I always take it back to the deep state cabals that have been around for many, many years. So as we consider all of these different global issues, what we're going to do is say, gosh, Sam Adams and the founders had a very clear view of the global issues of their day. And because I always talk about Proverbs saying there's nothing new under the sun, it just comes back that, here on Sam Adams Returns, those anti-federalists, they got it right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to this third segment of Samuel Adams Returns, those anti-federalists got it right. And I'll tell you what, we're having a great time with John Trudel here, going through his background, the books, the intrigue, his insight, how he's able to take and just discern through all the various resources that he has. Wow, what can happen next, John? I mean, I'm just intrigued. We're taking it through Raven's, just the whole Raven series, and yet I'm intrigued to see what else is out on your radar, since everybody's had you on their radar.
Well, let me say what I can say about that. The first Ravens book was Raven's Run, and it had, it started with the paranormal stuff, and it had terrorists with Iranian nuclear weapons. And at the end of that book, a lot has happened, and they barely survive.
Yes.
We move on to the next book in the series, and by God, they're trying to assassinate the president.
Yes.
Okay, so we deal with that. And the one that is just out now, I had to do this. I could not restrain myself. I've got Russians in my book. God help us all. And they're not dispensing salad dressing. These are KGB hardcore kind of nasty guys who we can't trust at all, but we need to work with them because we have some common interests.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, we forget that, but the Russians have a valid international arrest warrant out for Soros.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So we can agree about that.
Yes, for Soros. Let's see. Boy, don't we wish we can actually take that one to the bank?
Well, yeah, and I can in my novels. I can do all kinds of stuff. So anyway, there we are with that one. And now I have attracted more interest, and you'll see on those books as we come along, some people have surfaced and put their names on my books. Paul Vallely's a retired two-star, really neat guy.
Yes.
He's a military analyst for fun. He's bored my last couple of books, and he gets me into all kinds of trouble. Okay.
Right.
Here we are. You have friends and everything, and so you exchange Christmas cards or New Year's cards or something like this. So I'm sitting there. We're snowbirds, so I normally go down to Arizona and try to stay warm in the winter. But I couldn't leave this time because I had some surgery, and there we were, and I was stuck here. And so instead of a card, I get a note electronically from Paul. It's like January 2nd or 3rd or something. And it's a picture of him in Aleppo, Syria. And there's Paul, and it's him standing, everybody's in camo, and there's all these guys standing around with guns, and it's one of the, one of the guys that's on our side, one of his groups, and it's Paul. And what he's doing there, I will never know, and I don't want to know.
Right.
But over their heads in Arabic, you see some words. And so what those words say is that ISIS has put a bounty on Paul and the guy that he's talking to, each of them. They don't want them killed. They want them kidnapped and brought in so that they can be publicly beheaded.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's Paul's New Year's. Well, that didn't happen. Paul came back just fine.
Yes.
And ISIS isn't there anymore, and I assume that's all a coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
Sure it is.
Yeah. No, that's always interesting to, watch how those things work. And, there's a lot of good folks that are out there doing contracting work, and if you will, I guess we could call it that, or still, working for opportunities that will continue to make this country great and safe. So I thank you for that relationship that you have with General Valley, and it's been interesting because I've had some peripheral contact with him, especially through the folks down there in Arizona with all the Tea Party crowd down there. That
yeah, that was fun.
That's a good crowd. I'll tell you what, that's a good crowd.
Well, let me tell you one more story, and this gets back to Paul again. So we had been missing each other by, a week or two. He'd be at a group down there talking, and I would be at that group a month later or maybe a month before. Mm-hmm. And people kept telling, do you know him? Well, yeah, we kind of knew each other, but I never met him. And so finally, he's there. And I said, whenever you come down here and we're here at the same time, I'd like to see you. So sure enough, we do this, and he's in for a big group, and he's doing a keynote speech. And we can have time for a cup of coffee and everything. So we do that. We met, we talked, we knew they had mutual friends and everything. It got very interesting. And so this goes on and on and on. And finally, his wife comes looking for him. The whole morning is gone. And she says, where are you? Oh, I'm going to meet John. So we do that. And I met his wife and the kids and the grandkids and yada, yada, yada. And so in my novel, Raven's Run, that you read, mm-hmm. What I used for a launch platform for these terrorists with the Iranian nuclear weapons was a Russian icebreaker. Okay, and that got me down to Antarctica, and that was part of the storyline. Right. But that was okay, and he hadn't talked about. He'd read the book, said he liked the book and everything. So we're leaving, we're breaking up, and he starts to walk away, and he pauses, comes back, pulls out his cell phone, said, "I want to show you something," and he pulls out this clip, and it is a video of one of these super container ships, and this thing is huge, row after row after row mm-hmm. of the standard 40-foot containers. Right. And wherever it was, there was no background. It looked like it was hot, and it was somewhere where the weather was warm, the water was very blue. Mm-hmm. And on the top level, one of the tops flips up on one of these cargo containers. Up pops a missile launcher, and zingo, away it goes, and Paul names it. It's a Russian-Iranian mm-hmm. a Russian intermediate range missile. Yeah. And I go, holy shit. And he says, there it is. And he closes his phone, puts it in his pocket, walks away, and I'm there like, holy America. Okay. So weeks pass, and I don't want to bother the guy. I can't stand it. I call him up, and I say, Paul, where did you get that video? Uh-huh. It looks so real. Okay. And he says, John, you wrote the book. Yeah. And I go, Paul, I made up a story. Right. All right. So we go around there, and he says, and of course, I didn't expect he'd tell me where he got the video, and he didn't. Right. But he did say, go to Google and Google Club K. It could be CLUB space K or KLUB space K. And I do, and by God, it is a Russian missile system that fits in a standard cargo container. Mm-hmm. It's 4 launchers, and they had been selling them to Iran for a couple years at the time that I became aware of it. Yes. So it's an official missile system. The one that I saw, it's being advertised. You don't see it in the Western media, but right. You go to Reuters and things like that. They're advertising it all over the world. Yeah. And the one that they were marketing was really, it had 3 put GPS kind of guided missiles. You punch in the coordinates, zingo, a bridge goes away or whatever. The fourth one was really nasty. Oh. It was hypersonic, and it had a depleted uranium warhead. Yeah. It was a carrier killer. And right. I go, man, that sucker is mean. Yeah.
There are a lot of things. I know a number of years ago, one of the companies that I started, we were doing some interesting work, within the different environments, and some of the things that we're trying to figure out is how do you find those gaps in the satellites where ships pass in the night in the middle of the ocean. And that's very problematic, and it goes to that point of the container ships and all of that. But so there's a lot of those types of interesting things that most Americans and the American media don't even cover. But with that, I really want to ask you, because we're getting down to the end of the last segment here, is all right, you're really successful, and I'm a struggling, wannabe kind of guy. But from your perspective and what you've gone through, what's the best part of being that successful novelist? And then and what do you enjoy about that? And then on the counter side, what in the world is the worst part of it?
Oh, that's a good question. And the first thing I love about being a novelist is people that resonate with my books. People will tell me stories, and they'll bring me information and talk, and it makes me feel so good. Somebody will like one of my stories, and they'll talk about it, and they'll talk about it in their context. And I love that. It is very uplifting. And so talking to people, doing the research is pretty good too. Mm-hmm. And having people, you can have a dialogue if you're a novelist with people you would never otherwise meet. So that's good. So that's what I enjoy the most. Mm-hmm. What I don't like the most is it gets you on the radar screen, and so then you wind up being sabotaged. You look at it, and it happens to anybody conservative. You take Clint Eastwood, he'll make a really good movie, mm-hmm. and it outsells everything else put together at the Academy Awards, but he doesn't win one, because it's a rigged system. Yeah. So you get sabotaged, and I am blacklisted on Amazon, as I said, and that's bad enough. I can't post there. Mm-hmm. And if anybody wants to help me, take one of my books. If you like it, throw a review up on Amazon, because a lot of people just look at the number of reviews, and I don't have enough there. But they also can game the search engines. If you want to find, you can go to my website, www.johntrudel.com. It lets you click through to anywhere you want to buy books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. It'll take you right there to my author's pages on all those places. But if you try to search for John Trudel on Amazon, the search engine just gets confused. Mm-hmm. And if you search for John Trudel, it'll find some Canadian guy with 2 L's. No, that isn't me. Yeah. So if you want to find all my books, you have to, and I've complained, of course, and they say, well, we can't do anything about it. If you look under books for John D, middle initial D, mm-hmm. Trudel with 1 L, not 2 L's, all my books pop up. But if you look in any other way, if you look just for Trudel, somebody else comes up, or maybe sometimes some of the searches will bring up dozens of pages of stuff, and I'll be in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. But they just do things to sabotage you, and it's, here they are right now. They don't want Trump to be able to block these people that are sliming his tweets. Right. Okay, so there's a lot of sabotage.
Well, this goes back to privacy wars, so it circles back a number of years later after you wrote that to, once again, the depth of that occurring within, these with what we expected, that if evil people got a hold of good technology, what they potentially could do, and we're seeing that. So it's go ahead.
I write these things, I invent them, and it happens. But even as an author, I had no idea. Obama turned the FBI into the KGB. Mm-hmm. I had no idea how deep it was. Okay, yeah. and everybody talks about the fake news media whose ratings are falling and falling and falling. Well, they really don't care about their ratings or their viewers. They're being subsidized by Soros and who knows what else. Right. So it's like a propaganda arm. So I had no idea that the magnitude of it was that large. Yeah. And in fact, people are still trying to find out how large it is.
Yeah, we're doing some of that work, and so it's really interesting. We're down to our last minute, and one of the things, just real quick, because I'm just waiting for what you're going to have coming out someday on China, because I have some guys that were DOD folks that wrote some things about China 15 years ago, and what I've seen in the reports and what I've seen in some other stuff when I was way back active duty on the potentials of China are just mind-boggling. So you 15 seconds on that, John.
Oh, absolutely right. China is a big strategic threat. All of these people can be, and in some ways they can be helpful. Okay, the Islamists probably don't like China a whole bunch, but they are a big threat.
Yes.
And so you have big things. And as far as a blue water fleet, yeah, they can be there. They have the resource to do it, and they have the intent to do it. And that's what gets. I put Russians in my novel this time, just so to point out some things. We could use some allies. We have some common interests with the Chinese, sure, but they're enemies in other ways. That's the way the world works.
All right, and we're going to have to wrap, John, and I'm looking forward to some of your next works. Good fortune on this one with Raven Resurrection. And folks, come on back next week to Samuel Adams Returns, because those anti-federalists, they absolutely got it right.